The massive alien warships moved through space like floating cities. Each one was bigger than Earth's largest mountains, covered in weapons that could destroy entire planets. Admiral Zexkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at 11 other giant ships that followed his command. His blue skin gleamed under the bright lights, and his 4 arms moved quickly across the control panels. "Today, we show these young races what real power looks like," Zexkar said to his officers. His voice was deep and scary, like thunder rolling across the sky. The other aliens on the bridge nodded and made clicking sounds with their mandibles. The Velthari Empire was the strongest force in this part of the galaxy. Their ships were built from metal harder than diamonds and powered by captured stars. But they were not alone in this show of force. Ships from 4 other great alien races floated nearby, all working together to prove their strength. The crystalline Ethmori brought 3 ships that looked like giant jewels. Light passed through, their hulls in beautiful patterns, but inside each crystal ship were weapons that could turn matter into pure energy. Captain Silvana commanded their fleet with thoughts instead of words, her crystal body glowing brighter when she was excited. The Krethak swarm sent their largest hive ships. These black vessels crawled with millions of insect-like warriors, each one ready to die for their queen. General Zekth clicked his claws together as he watched the human ship in the distance. To him, humans looked like soft, weak creatures that belonged in his food storage. The Lumnari Collective floated in ships made of pure energy held together by force fields. They had no solid bodies, existing as living light that could pass through walls and fly through space without protection. Admiral Brightness of Dawn spoke in musical tones that translated into words the other races could understand. The Aquatic Hydros Federation brought their water-filled vessels, huge spheres that carried entire oceans inside them. Admiral Tidewalker swam through the command chamber of his flagship, his gills filtering the specially treated seawater that kept him alive. Far away from this impressive display of alien power, a small human ship watched quietly. The USS Endeavour was tiny compared to the alien warships, looking like a minnow swimming near whales. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, feeling very small and unimportant. "Are you recording all of this, Amy?" Morrison asked his censor. "Officer." Lieutenant Amy Torres nodded as her fingers danced over the computer controls. "Yes, sir. The aliens are putting on quite a show," she said. "Their energy readings are off the charts. Each of those big ships has enough firepower to glass an entire continent." Morrison shook his head in amazement. Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. They were still learning how to build proper spaceships, while these aliens had been flying between stars for thousands of years. The Galactic Council allowed humans to watch their military exercises, but only as curious observers, like children watching adults work. "Attention, human vessel," came a message from Admiral Zexkar's ship. The alien's voice sounded bored and slightly annoyed. "You will maintain your current distance and observe our demonstration. Do not interfere or attempt to approach our formations." "Understood, Admiral," Morrison replied politely. He had learned that being respectful to the aliens was the best way to avoid trouble. Humans were still very new to galactic politics, and making enemies would be a terrible mistake. The alien fleet arranged itself in a perfect battle formation. Each ship took its position with mathematical precision, creating patterns that showed centuries of military experience. In front of them floated a massive asteroid, easily the size of a small moon. This rock was headed toward a mining colony, and the aliens had volunteered to destroy it as a demonstration of their power. "Watch carefully, little humans," Admiral Zexkar broadcast on an open channel. "This is what real galactic power looks like. Your species builds ships from metal and hopes for the best. We build ships that can reshape reality itself. The first ship to fire was a Velthari dreadnought. A beam of pure antimatter shot from its main gun, bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. The beam struck the asteroid and began eating through solid rock like acid through paper. Chunks of stone the size of buildings broke away and turned to vapor. Then the Athamori ships joined in. Their crystal weapons focused starlight into beams that could cut through anything. The light beams carved the asteroid into neat sections, each cut perfectly straight and smooth as glass. The Krethak ships launched millions of small fighters, each one controlled by a warrior willing to die in the attack. They swarmed over the asteroid like angry bees, their weapons eating away at the rock from all sides at once. The Lumnari ships became brighter than small suns, pouring pure energy into the asteroid. Where their light touched the rock, matter simply stopped existing, leaving empty space behind. Finally, the Hydro's ships fired streams of superheated water that moved faster than bullets. The water hit with the force of falling mountains, smashing the remaining pieces into tiny fragments. In less than 5 minutes, the asteroid was completely gone. Where once there had been millions of tons of solid rock, now there was only empty space filled with glittering dust. The alien fleet had turned a mountain-sized object into sparkling powder without even trying hard. "Impressive, isn't it?" Admiral Zexkar asked Captain Morrison. The alien's voice carried clear pride and more than a little arrogance. "This was just a simple exercise for us. Each of our ships alone could destroy your entire planet without breaking a sweat." Morrison felt his stomach twist with fear and embarrassment. He knew the alien was right. Earth's most powerful weapons were like firecrackers compared to what he had just seen. If these aliens ever decided that humans were a threat or a nuisance, his entire species could be wiped out in a few hours. "Thank you for allowing us to observe," Morrison said carefully. "We have much to learn about galactic technology." The alien commanders laughed among themselves, making sounds like breaking glass and grinding metal. To them, humans were an amusing curiosity, a primitive species that had somehow stumbled into space travel through luck rather than skill. They were barely worth noticing, except as a source of entertainment. As the alien fleet began to move away from the destruction zone, none of them noticed the small energy signature approaching from deep space. Their sensors registered it as background radiation, too weak and distant to be worth investigating. They had no idea that in just 3 days, their entire understanding of galactic power would be shattered forever. 3 days after the asteroid demonstration, Lieutenant Amy Torres was running her usual sensor sweeps when something strange appeared on her screens. She blinked and looked again, thinking her equipment might be broken, but the reading was still there, growing stronger by the minute. "Captain Morrison, you need to see this," she called out. Her voice had a worried edge that made everyone on the bridge turn to look at her. Morrison walked over to her station and stared at the display. A small dot was moving toward their position, but the energy readings made no sense. One moment, the object seemed almost dead in space, giving off barely any energy at all. The next moment, the readings spiked so high they went off the top of their measuring scale. "What am I looking at, Amy?" Morrison asked. "I'm not sure, sir. It's about the size of one of our cruisers, but these energy patterns are completely crazy. I've never seen anything like this before," Torres replied. She tried adjusting her instruments, but the readings kept jumping around like a broken thermometer. The unknown ship was still far away, but it was heading directly toward the alien fleet. Morrison felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The alien. Commanders had made it very clear that this was their space, and they did not like surprises. "Try to contact them," Morrison ordered. "Use all frequencies." Torres worked at her controls for several minutes, sending out messages in every language and on every radio channel she could think of. Nothing came back except empty static and the background noise of space. On the alien flagship, Admiral Zexkar was also staring at sensor readings that made no sense. His science officer, a thin Velthari named Krelvin, kept shaking his head and muttering under his breath. "It cannot be a weapon," Krelvin said. "The energy patterns are too unstable. But it is also not a normal ship. No known species builds vessels with this kind of signature." Zexkar's 4 arms moved across his control panels as he contacted the other alien commanders. Within minutes, all 5 fleets were sharing sensor data and trying to figure out what was approaching them. "Perhaps it is another human vessel," suggested Captain Silvana of the Eth Mori. Her crystal body flashed with colors that showed curiosity mixed with annoyance. "Impossible," replied General Zekth of the Krethak. "We know where all their ships are. Humans barely have enough vessels to patrol their own system, let alone send one out here." Admiral Brightness of Dawn of the Lumnari flickered with patterns of light that translated as confusion. "The energy readings suggest technology far beyond what humans possess. But it also does not match any known galactic civilization." Admiral Tidewalker of the Hydros Federation swam in circles inside his water-filled command chamber, a sign that he was thinking hard. "Could it be a ship from outside our galaxy? An invasion vessel from another star cluster?" Zexkar contacted the human ship directly. "Captain Morrison, is this unknown vessel one of yours?" Morrison's face appeared on the main screen, and even through the video link, his confusion was obvious. "No, Admiral. Earth has no ships in this sector besides the Endeavor. We're tracking it too, but we can't make contact." The unknown ship continued its steady approach, ignoring all attempts at communication. As it came closer, the alien sensors began to pick up more details about its construction. The vessel was unlike anything in their databases. It had a sleek, angular design with strange geometric patterns covering its hull. The patterns seemed to shift and change when observed directly, making it hard to focus on the ship's exact shape. "The hull material is completely unknown," reported Krelvin. "It appears to absorb most forms of scanning energy and redirect others in impossible ways. It is as if the ship exists partially outside normal space." The most disturbing thing about the approaching vessel was how it moved. Normal ships had to push against space to accelerate, using engines that burned fuel or converted matter into energy. This ship seemed to glide through the void without any visible means of propulsion, as if space itself was pulling it forward. "Should we assume defensive positions?" asked General Zekth. His mandibles clicked together nervously as he watched the unknown ship grow larger on his screens. "Not yet," Zexkar decided. "It is only one small vessel. Even if it is hostile, what could it possibly do against 12 dreadnoughts?" The alien fleet continued its patrol route, but every commander kept one eye on their sensors. The unknown ship maintained its course, neither speeding up nor slowing down, like a predator that knew exactly where its prey would be. Hours passed with no change. The mystery vessel continued its approach while the aliens grew more nervous. With each passing minute, their weapons were charged and ready, but none of them wanted to be the first to fire on an unidentified ship that might be peaceful. Then, without warning, the ship responded to their communication attempts. But instead of words or data, The transmission was pure static mixed with something that made the aliens' blood run cold. Through the static came the sound of human music, specifically a piece that seemed designed for war and battle. The music was unlike anything the aliens had ever heard. It was powerful and aggressive, full of driving rhythms and soaring melodies that spoke of conquest and victory. To ears that were used to the gentle harmonies of galactic civilization, this music sounded like the voice of violence itself. "What is that noise?" Admiral Brightness of Dawn flickered with colors that showed fear and confusion. On the Endeavor, Amy Torres was listening to the same transmission with growing amazement. "Captain, I know this music. It's Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries. It's a classical piece from Earth, written hundreds of years ago." Morrison felt the cold knot in his stomach grow tighter. Why would an unknown ship be broadcasting old Earth music? And why choose a piece that was famous for being played during battle scenes in old movies? The mystery ship was now close enough for visual contact. Through their telescopes, the aliens could see that it was indeed built along human design principles, but everything about it was wrong. The technology was clearly centuries beyond anything humans were supposed to possess. The hull gleamed with materials that seemed to drink in starlight and reflected back in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "This makes no sense," Zexkar muttered. "Humans are barely capable of building simple fusion drives. How could they construct something like this?" As if in answer to his question, the unknown ship finally responded to their communications with words instead of music. The voice that came through their speakers was calm, polite, and completely human. "Greetings, Galactic Fleet. This is Commander Kyle Bennett of the UHS Retribution. I apologize for the delay in responding to your hails. We were running some final system checks." The aliens looked at each other in confusion. The voice sounded like it belonged to a young human male, but the confidence in his tone suggested someone who was used to being in complete control of any situation. "I have a request," the voice continued. "I would like permission to dock with the human observation vessel and speak with your commanders in person. I believe we have much to discuss about the current state of galactic politics." Zexkar's mandibles clicked together angrily. The arrogance of this unknown human was beyond belief. A single small ship was requesting an audience with the commanders of the galaxy's most powerful fleets, as if they were equals. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that perhaps they were about to discover something that would change everything they thought they knew about humans and their place in the galaxy. Captain Morrison stared at the communication panel as if it might explode at any moment. The request from Commander Bennett was simple enough, but everything about the situation felt wrong. No human ship should be out here, and certainly not one with technology that made his sensors give impossible readings. "Sir, what should we tell him?" asked Amy Torres. Her voice was quiet, but Morrison could hear the fear underneath her professional tone. Before Morrison could answer, Admiral Zexkar's voice boomed through the communication system. "Human vessel Endeavor, you will not allow this unknown ship to dock with you. We do not know what kind of threat it represents." Morrison took a deep breath. He was caught between the alien fleet commanders who could destroy his ship with a single shot and a mysterious human who seemed far too confident for someone facing 12 dreadnoughts alone. "With respect, Admiral," Morrison replied carefully, "if this is indeed a human vessel, then it falls under Earth's jurisdiction. I have a duty to provide assistance to any human crew that requests it." The alien commanders began arguing among themselves on the open channel. General Zekth clicked, his mandibles aggressively while Captain Silvana's crystal body flashed with angry red colors. Admiral brightness of dawn flickered so quickly that the translation systems could barely keep up with his rapid-fire complaints. Through all the chaos, Commander Bennett's voice came through again, still calm and polite. "I understand your concerns. Admiral Zexkar, perhaps it would help if I explained the situation. Captain Morrison, permission to come aboard?" Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for his decision. Finally, he nodded. "Permission granted, Commander. Docking Bay 2 is clear." The UHS Retribution moved toward the Endeavor with impossible grace. Up close, Morrison could see that the hull was covered in patterns that seemed to move and shift like living things. The docking process was completely silent, as if the unknown ship was somehow adjusting its position without using any kind of thruster system. A few minutes later, a single figure in an advanced environmental suit walked through the airlock. Commander Kyle Bennett looked like a normal human in his 30s, with brown hair and calm blue eyes. But his suit was unlike anything Morrison had ever seen. It seemed to be made from the same strange material as his ship's hull, and it moved, with him like a second skin rather than a bulky life support system. "Thank you for allowing me aboard, Captain," Bennett said as he removed his helmet. His voice was friendly and relaxed, as if meeting in the middle of deep space was the most natural thing in the world. "Commander, I have to ask," Morrison began, "what is Earth doing with technology like this? And why wasn't I informed about any deep space missions?" Bennett smiled, but there was something in his expression that made Morrison feel very cold. "Captain, how long do you think it takes a species to go from discovering fire to splitting the atom?" "I'm not sure I understand the question," Morrison replied. "For humans, it was about 50,000 years, Bennett continued. "How long do you think it takes to go from splitting the atom to reshaping matter at the quantum level?" Morrison felt his stomach drop. "I don't know." "For humans, it was about 50 years, Bennett said quietly. "The question is, what do you think we've been doing with that knowledge?" Before Morrison could respond, Admiral Zexkar's voice cut through the ship's communication system. "Unknown human, you will explain your presence here immediately. Your vessel is not registered in any galactic database, and your technology readings are impossible." Bennett walked to the communication panel and activated the video link. When his face appeared on the screens of all 12 alien dreadnoughts, several of the alien commanders stepped backward in surprise. There was something in his eyes that spoke of knowledge and power far beyond his years. "Greetings, Admiral Zexkar and fellow commanders," Bennett said with a polite nod. "I represent Earth's Deep Space Reconnaissance Division. We've been monitoring galactic civilization for quite some time now, and we've decided it's time to take a more active role in local affairs." The alien commanders began shouting questions and demands all at once, but Bennett raised his hand for silence. Surprisingly, they all stopped talking. "I know this comes as a surprise," Bennett continued. "Your species have spent centuries believing that humans are primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. In truth, we've been deliberately hiding our capabilities while we studied your cultures, your technologies, and your military doctrines." General Zekth's mandibles clicked furiously. "Impossible. We have been watching your species since you first achieved faster-than-light travel. Your technology is centuries behind ours." Bennett's smile grew wider, and Morrison realized that it was not a friendly expression at all. "General, what you've been watching is what we wanted you to see. About 50 years ago, human scientists discovered something in the outer edges of our solar system, a derelict vessel from a civilization that died out millions of years before your species ever looked at the stars. Captain Silvana's crystal body flashed with colors that showed disbelief. You expect us to believe that humans have access to ancient alien technology? I don't expect you to believe anything, Bennett replied. I expect you to observe and learn. You see, we've been studying not just the technology we found, but also how galactic civilizations use their military power. We've watched your wars, your conquests, and your demonstrations of force. We've learned everything there is to know about how you fight. Admiral Tidewalker swam nervously in his water-filled chamber. Even if what you say is true, you are still just one ship against 12 dreadnoughts. What could you possibly hope to accomplish? Bennett turned to Captain Morrison, and his expression became almost apologetic. Captain, I'm afraid this conversation is about to become very unpleasant. You might want to move your ship to a safe distance. Morrison felt panic rising in his chest. Commander, whatever you're planning, please don't do this. These aliens could destroy Earth if you make them angry enough. Captain, Bennett said gently, Earth stopped worrying about what these species could do to us a very long time ago. The question now is what we're going to do to them. On the alien ships, the commanders were having hurried discussions among themselves. Admiral Zexkar finally spoke for all of them. Human, your claims are ridiculous. No species makes technological advances that quickly, especially not one as primitive as yours. If you truly believe your single vessel is a match for our combined fleets, then perhaps a demonstration is in order. Bennett's smile became genuinely happy for the first time since he had boarded the Endeavor. Admiral, I was hoping you would say that. I've been looking forward to field testing our new systems against real opponents. This is madness, Morrison whispered, but Bennett was already putting his helmet back on. Captain, you should really move your ship back about 50,000 kilometers, Bennett said as he walked toward the airlock. What's about to happen will be very bright, and we wouldn't want to damage your sensors. As the UHS Retribution undocked, from the Endeavor, Admiral Zexkar gave orders for all 12 alien dreadnoughts to assume battle formation. Their weapons powered up with energy discharges that lit up the darkness of space like artificial stars. Unknown human vessel, Zexkar broadcast. You have one chance to surrender and submit to galactic authority. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why the Galactic Council has ruled this part of space for 10,000 years. Bennett's response came back immediately, and for the first time his voice carried an edge of steel that made everyone listening feel afraid. Admiral, 10,000 years is a good run, but all empires eventually come to an end. Today, yours does. The UHS Retribution drifted alone between the alien battle line and a nearby nebula, looking tiny and helpless against the overwhelming firepower arrayed against it. But Morrison noticed something that made his blood run cold. The unknown ship's energy readings had stopped fluctuating. For the first time since it had appeared, the vessel was showing steady, massive power levels that registered far beyond anything his instruments could properly measure. Admiral Zexkar stood on his bridge, looking out at the small human vessel that dared to challenge the combined might of 5 galactic empires. His 4 arms moved quickly over the weapon controls as he prepared to teach these arrogant humans a lesson they would never forget. All ships, prepare for combat, Zexkar commanded. Around him, his bridge crew worked with efficient precision. Warning lights flashed red as the ship's massive antimatter cannons charged to full power. We will show this fool what happens to those who challenge galactic authority. The 12 alien dreadnoughts moved into perfect battle formation, their movements coordinated by thousands of years of military tradition. Each ship was a floating fortress capable of destroying planets, armed with weapons that could crack moons in half. Together, they represented the most powerful military force in known space. Captain Morrison watched from the Endeavor, which had moved to what he hoped was a safe distance. His hands gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. "Amy, are you recording all of this?" "Yes, sir," Lieutenant Torres replied, though her voice shook slightly. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildups from all the alien ships. They're charging their primary weapons." On the UHS Retribution, Commander Bennett stood calmly on his bridge, watching the alien formations arrange themselves. His crew worked quietly at their stations, their movements smooth and confident. Unlike the frantic activity on the alien ships, the human vessel seemed almost peaceful. "Lisa, what's our tactical assessment?" Bennett asked his weapons officer. Captain Lisa Ward looked up from her displays with a slight smile. 12 ships. Conventional antimatter and plasma weapons. Standard deflector shields. Their formation is textbook perfect, which means it's completely predictable. Estimated time to neutralize all targets. 3 minutes, 40 seconds. "That seems a bit slow," Bennett commented. "What's the delay?" "I wanted to give them time to realize what's happening," Ward replied. "It seems only fair." The first shot came from Admiral Zexkar's flagship. The antimatter cannon fired a beam of pure destruction that could vaporize anything it touched. The energy bolt crossed the space between the ships in an instant, striking the UHS Retribution dead center. For a moment, the human ship disappeared in a blaze of light so bright that every viewing screen in the area automatically darkened to protect the eyes of those watching. The alien commanders leaned forward in their chairs, expecting to see empty space where their target had been. But as the light faded, the UHS Retribution hung in space exactly where it had been before. Its hull glowed with absorbed energy for a few seconds, then returned to its normal appearance. There was no damage, no debris, no sign that the most powerful weapon in the alien fleet had even touched it. "Impossible," breathed General Zekth. His mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. Bennett's voice came over the communication channels, still calm and polite. "Thank you for the energy donation, Admiral. That was quite refreshing. Now let me show you what humanity has learned about warfare." The UHS Retribution began to change. What had appeared to be a solid hull started to unfold like a flower opening its petals. The ship split apart into dozens of smaller vessels, each one moving with impossible speed and agility. In seconds, what had been one target became a swarm of attackers that scattered in all directions. "All ships open fire!" Zexkar commanded. "Destroy them all!" The alien fleet unleashed everything they had. Antimatter beams, plasma cannons, particle accelerators, and fusion missiles filled the space around them with deadly energy. But the human ships moved like ghosts, phasing in and out of normal space in ways that made targeting impossible. "I can't get a lock!" shouted the Velthari weapons officer. "They're moving through dimensions we can't even detect!" The first alien ship to die was a Krathak heavy cruiser. One of the human vessels simply appeared next to it, moving so close that it seemed to be touching the alien hull. There was a flash of silver light, and then the cruiser was gone. Not destroyed, not blown apart, simply gone, as if it had never existed at all. "What happened to the nest defender?" General Zeketh demanded. His sensors showed nothing where his ship had been, no debris, No energy signature, no trace that millions of tons of metal and millions of lives had ever been there. Bennett's voice answered him. We disassembled it at the molecular level and converted the raw materials into energy. Very efficient, really. No waste at all. The second target was an Eth Mori crystal ship. Captain Silvana watched in horror as one of the human vessels generated what looked like a small black hole. The gravitational field grabbed her ship and crushed it down to the size of a marble in less than 3 seconds, squeezing a vessel the size of a city into a sphere small enough to hold in her hand. Gravitational manipulation, Bennett explained, helpfully. We've learned to create and control artificial singularities, very useful for mining operations, and as you can see, quite effective in combat as well. Admiral Brightness of Dawn tried to rally his fellow commanders. Spread out. Don't let them concentrate their attacks. But even as he gave the order, he realized it was useless. The human ships were everywhere at once, moving through space in ways that defied every law of physics he understood. A Hydros Federation battleship tried to escape by diving into the nearby nebula, hoping the gas clouds would hide it from enemy sensors. Instead, one of the human vessels released what looked like a cloud of glittering dust. The tiny particles spread through the gas clouds and found the hidden ship within seconds. Admiral Tidewalker watched in terror as the dust settled on his ship's hull and began to glow. "What is that substance?" he demanded. "Nanoscopic machines," Bennett replied. "They're converting your hull into more copies of themselves. In about 30 seconds, your entire ship will be raw materials that we can use for other projects, Tidewalkers." Vessel began to dissolve from the outside in. The metal hull flowed like water, reshaping itself into new forms that served the human attackers. Within moments, the great battleship had been consumed completely, transformed into resources for the enemy. Captain Morrison watched the battle from the Endeavor with growing horror. This wasn't a fight, it was an extermination. The aliens were being systematically destroyed by weapons and technologies that seemed to treat the fundamental laws of physics as merely suggestions. "Sir," Amy Torres whispered, "their ships aren't just being destroyed, they're being unmade. It's like the humans have weapons that can rewrite reality itself." The alien fleet's desperate attempts at defense proved completely useless. Their shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, offered no protection against attacks that changed the basic properties of matter. Their armor, forged from the strongest materials in the galaxy, meant nothing against weapons that could convince atoms to simply stop existing. A Luminari energy ship tried to phase into a higher dimension to escape, but one of the human vessels followed it effortlessly. The battle continued in spaces that normal sensors couldn't even detect, until the Luminari ship reappeared as a shower of sparks that quickly faded to nothing. "How are they doing this?" Admiral Zexkar demanded, but his voice was no longer arrogant. For the first time in his long military career, he was afraid. Bennett's response was educational rather than mocking. "We found the remnants of a civilization that learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. They treated matter and energy as programming languages rather than fixed states. We've simply learned to speak their language." 3. Minutes into the engagement, only 3 alien ships remained operational. Admiral Zexkar's flagship and 2 escort vessels hung in space, surrounded by empty void where their fleet had been. Their crews stared at their instruments in disbelief, unable to accept that the galaxy's most powerful military force had been destroyed by weapons they couldn't even understand. The UHS Retribution reformed itself from its component parts, becoming a single ship once again. It drifted peacefully in the center of the destruction zone, unmarked by the battle that had just ended. "Now then," Bennett said, his voice returning to its original polite tone. "Shall we discuss the terms of your surrender?" The silence that followed Commander Bennett's question was the most terrifying sound Admiral Zexkar had ever heard. Around him, his bridge crew stared at their instruments in disbelief. Their sensors showed empty space where moments before, 9 of the galaxy's most powerful warships had been floating. "Surrender?" Zexkar finally managed to speak, though his voice cracked with shock. "You destroyed 9 dreadnoughts in 3 minutes. How is this possible?" Bennett's image appeared. On the main screen, still wearing that calm, friendly expression that now seemed more frightening than any battle cry. "Admiral, I told you that humanity discovered ancient technology. What I didn't mention is that the civilization we found had solved problems that your species haven't even begun to think about." On the remaining Ethmori escort ship, Captain Telshan watched her sensors with growing horror. The readings made no sense at all. According to her instruments, the human vessels weren't just using advanced weapons. They were somehow changing the basic rules of how the universe worked. "Commander Bennett," she transmitted, her crystal body flickering with colors that showed fear and confusion. "What you're doing is impossible. Matter cannot be converted to energy that efficiently. Gravity cannot be controlled like a tool. These things violate fundamental laws of physics." Bennett's smile grew wider. "Captain, your species discovered faster than light travel by learning to fold space. That also violates what you used to think were fundamental laws. The difference is that the civilization we found had millions of years to figure out which laws were actually fundamental and which were just limitations of perspective." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Foster, the UHS Retribution's tactical coordinator, spoke up from his station. "Commander, shall I demonstrate our manufacturing capabilities? It might help them understand the scope of what they're dealing with." "Good idea, Ryan," Bennett replied. "Admiral Zexkar, watch your sensors carefully. You're about to see how we turn raw energy into finished products." The space around the UHS Retribution began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Within seconds, new ships began to appear, growing from nothing like flowers blooming in fast forward. These weren't being built in the traditional sense. They were being created directly from the energy released when the alien ships had been destroyed. "We don't mine asteroids for metal," Bennett explained as the new vessels took shape. "We don't build factories to manufacture components. We simply condense energy to become whatever we need. The matter from your destroyed ships is being recycled into new forms that serve our purposes better." Admiral Tidewalker, floating in his water-filled command chamber, watched in fascination and terror as the human technology reshaped reality before his eyes. "How long have your people possessed this knowledge?" "We've been working with it for about 30 years, Bennett replied, "though it took us most of that time just to figure out how to read the instruction manuals. The species that built the derelict ship thought in ways that human minds weren't designed to understand. Learning their technology was like trying to do mathematics while standing on your head underwater." Captain Morrison, watching from the Endeavor, felt his understanding of the universe crumble around him. Everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy was wrong. "Commander, why did Earth keep this secret? Why didn't we tell the Galactic Council about this discovery?" Bennett's expression became serious for the first time since the battle began. "Captain, what do you think would have happened if we had announced that humans possessed technology that could reshape matter at will? Do you think the galactic powers would have welcomed us as equals? Morrison thought about the casual arrogance he had heard from the alien commanders, their dismissive attitude toward humanity, their assumption that humans were primitive and harmless. They would have tried to destroy us. Exactly, Bennett nodded. So we decided to let them believe we were weak while we learned everything we could about their capabilities, their politics, and their military strategies. We've been sending disguised observation ships throughout the galaxy for decades, cataloging every species' strengths and weaknesses. The reality of the situation began to sink in for the surviving alien commanders. They weren't just facing superior technology. They were facing an enemy that had been studying them for years, learning their tactics, understanding their limitations, preparing for this exact moment. "You've been spying on us," Admiral Zexkar said, his voice hollow with realization. "We prefer to think of it as research," Bennett replied. "We needed to understand galactic civilization before we decided how to change it. Your species have had thousands of years to develop your current political and military systems. We needed to know which parts were worth preserving and which parts needed to be updated." General Zekth, commander of the last Krethak escort vessel, clicked, his mandibles together in a pattern that indicated extreme agitation. "Change it? You plan to conquer the galaxy?" "Conquer is such an ugly word," Bennett said thoughtfully. "We prefer to think of it as management transition. The current galactic order is inefficient, wasteful, and frankly rather cruel to the species on the bottom of the power structure. Humanity believes we can do better." Captain Lisa Ward looked up from her tactical display. "Commander, I'm detecting energy buildups from the remaining alien vessels. It looks like they're preparing to make a run for it." Bennett sighed with what seemed like genuine disappointment. "Admiral Zexkar, surely you're not thinking of trying to escape? You've seen what our technology can do. Do you really think conventional faster-than-light drives will help you?" As if to prove his point, the space around the three surviving alien ships began to ripple and fold. The stars in the background twisted into impossible shapes as the UHS Retribution manipulated local space-time to create what was essentially a cage made of curved reality. "We've isolated this region from the rest of normal space," Bennett explained. "Your ships are now existing in a pocket dimension that we control completely. You can't escape. You can't call for help, and you can't use your faster-than-light drives. Think of it as a very large prison cell." Admiral Tidewalker's voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to deliver a message to the Galactic Council," Bennett replied. "Tell them that humanity is ready to take a more active role in galactic affairs. The old order, where 5 species dominate thousands of others through military force and political manipulation, is ending. And if the Council refuses to listen?" asked Captain Telshan. Bennett's smile returned, but now it looked like the expression a predator might wear when cornering its prey. "Captain, we've been preparing for this conversation for 30 years. Every major military installation, every government center, every shipyard and research facility in Council space is currently being watched by cloaked human vessels. If the Council chooses to resist our suggestions, well, let's just say that this demonstration will seem very small by comparison." The implications of his words sank in slowly. The humans hadn't just built one advanced ship. They had constructed an entire fleet and positioned it throughout the galaxy. This wasn't a surprise attack. It was the final move in a game that had been going on for decades. "How many ships do you have?" Admiral Zexkar asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "Enough," Bennett replied simply. The question isn't whether we can reshape galactic civilization to our liking, Admiral. The question is whether we do it with your cooperation or over your dead bodies. We'd prefer cooperation, but we're prepared for either option. The 3 surviving alien ships hung in space, trapped in their pocket of twisted reality, their crews struggling to accept that everything they had believed about the balance of power in the galaxy was wrong. The age of alien dominance was over, ended not by a massive war or political revolution, but by a single human ship that had destroyed the galaxy's strongest fleet in less than 4 minutes. Admiral Zexkar stared at the empty space where his fleet had been, trying to make sense of what he had witnessed. 9 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying planets, had been erased from existence as if they had never been built. The weapons that had done this weren't just advanced. They operated on principles that his species couldn't even begin to understand. Commander Bennett, Zexkar said, his voice hollow with defeat, if your people possess such overwhelming power, why reveal it now? You could have remained hidden and struck when we least expected it. Bennett's image on the main screen nodded as if he had been expecting this question. A fair point, Admiral. The truth is, we've reached a point where hiding our capabilities has become more trouble than it's worth. Our technology has advanced to the level where we need more resources and more space to continue our development. What kind of resources? Asked Captain Telshan, her crystal body flickering with nervous energy. Raw materials, mostly, Bennett replied casually. We're working on some rather large construction projects that require more matter than our solar system can provide. We need access to uninhabited star systems, empty regions of space, and various exotic materials that are scattered throughout the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Foster looked up from his station with a slight grin. Commander, should I show them the Saturn project? It might help them understand the scale of what we're doing. Excellent idea, Bennett said. He turned back to the alien commanders with an expression of genuine enthusiasm. Gentlemen, ladies, and energy beings, you're about to see something that we're quite proud of. The main screen switched to show a view of humanity's home solar system. But something was terribly wrong with the image. Where the planet Saturn should have been, there was instead a massive construction project that defied easy description. The planet was being systematically disassembled, its matter being converted into geometric structures that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. We've been using Saturn as raw material for our shipbuilding program, Bennett explained, as if discussing a minor home improvement project. Turns out that gas giants make excellent sources of hydrogen and helium, and the rocky core provides useful heavy elements. We estimate we'll have the entire planet converted into usable resources within another 6 months. Admiral Tidewalker's voice was barely a whisper. You're destroying your own planets? Not destroying, Bennett corrected. Recycling. Every atom of Saturn is being put to better use than just sitting there being a planet. We're turning it into ships, space stations, research facilities, and manufacturing centers, much more efficient than leaving it as a useless ball of gas. Captain Morrison watched the images from the Endeavour with growing horror. The Saturn, he remembered from astronomy textbooks, was gone, replaced by artificial structures that looked like the work of gods rather than humans. Commander, what happened to the people who lived on Saturn's moons? There were research stations, mining colonies. Relocated to better facilities, Bennett replied. Don't worry, Captain. We're not monsters. Everyone was given plenty of advance notice and helped to resettle on Mars or Europa. Most of them are actually quite happy with their new homes. Better gravity, better air, better living conditions all around. The alien commanders exchanged glances that mixed fear with disbelief. If humans were casually disassembling planets in their own solar system, what would they do to worlds that belong to other species? This is madness, General Zekth clicked. No species has the right to remake the universe according to their own desires. Bennett's friendly expression didn't change, but his voice took on a harder edge. General, your species enslaved 17 different civilizations and turned their homeworlds into factory planets. The Velthari Empire strip mines entire solar systems and leaves dead space behind. The Ithmori treat other species as experimental subjects for their crystal growth experiments. Don't lecture us about the right to remake the universe. The accusations hung in the air like physical weights. Each species represented in the surviving ships had built their power on the conquest and exploitation of weaker civilizations. They had ruled through force for thousands of years, never questioning their right to dominate others. At least we never destroyed entire planets for raw materials, Admiral Zexkar protested. No, you destroyed them for target practice, Bennett replied coldly. I have detailed records of every planet your species has rendered uninhabitable for military exercises or to send messages to rebellious colonies. The difference is that when we disassemble a world, we use every atom for constructive purposes. When you destroy one, you just create debris. Captain Lisa Ward spoke up from her tactical station. Commander, we're receiving priority communications from Fleet Command. The Council is responding to our demonstration. Put it through, Bennett ordered. The screen split to show multiple images, representatives from dozens of galactic species, all talking at once in a chaos of alien languages. The translation systems struggled to keep up with the flood of demands, threats, and desperate questions. A tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and 6 arms stepped forward from the crowd. High Counselor Vexithara was the elected leader of the Galactic Council, chosen from among the most powerful species to mediate disputes and coordinate policy. Commander Bennett, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed by entire civilizations. The Galactic Council demands an immediate explanation for this unprovoked attack on a peaceful patrol fleet. Bennett's laugh was genuinely amused. Unprovoked? High Counselor, I requested a demonstration, and Admiral Zexkar graciously agreed to provide one. I'm simply showing the galactic community what humanity is capable of when properly motivated. You destroyed 9 warships and killed millions of crew members. Vexthara's voice rose to an angry shriek. Actually, no one was killed, Bennett corrected. Our disassembly technology separates all organic matter from inorganic matter. The crews of those ships are currently being held in our medical facilities, while we decide what to do with them. They're perfectly safe and completely unharmed. This news seemed to shock the alien commanders almost as much as the destruction of their ships. Captain Tel Shan's crystal body flashed with confused colors. You can selectively disassemble matter while preserving living tissue. It's not that difficult once you understand how biological systems organize themselves differently from manufactured materials, Bennett explained. We've been studying galactic biology for years, so we know how to extract crews safely before recycling their vessels. High Counselor Vexithara composed herself with visible effort. What do you want, Commander? What are humanity's demands? Bennett's expression became serious and businesslike. The immediate dissolution of the Galactic Council's military forces, reparations for 3 decades of condescending treatment and deliberate exclusion from galactic politics, recognition of humanity as the dominant species in this region of space, and complete access to all galactic databases, research facilities, and resource catalogs. Impossible, Vexthera snapped. The Council will never agree to such outrageous demands. Then the Council will be replaced by an organization that will, Bennett replied calmly. High Counselor, you have 48 hours to consider our offer. After that, we begin implementing our own solutions to the problems of galactic governance. And if we refuse? Asked Admiral Zexkar, though he already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Bennett's smile returned, cold and predatory. Admiral, do you remember me mentioning that we have ships positioned throughout Council space? Each one is currently orbiting a major population center or military installation. If the Council refuses our reasonable requests for political reform, we'll simply begin the process of reorganizing galactic civilization ourselves. The screen went dark as Bennett cut the communication link, leaving the alien commanders alone, with the terrible knowledge that their universe had just changed forever. The 48 hours that followed Commander Bennett's ultimatum passed like a nightmare for the galactic powers. Across hundreds of worlds, alien leaders held emergency meetings, desperate to find some way to respond to humanity's impossible demands. But every option they considered led to the same terrifying conclusion. They were completely helpless against technology they couldn't understand or fight. High Counselor Vexithara stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, looking out at representatives from nearly every known species in their region of space. The massive hall buzzed with nervous conversation as delegates argued over what to do about the human threat. The situation is clear, announced Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Navy. We must mobilize every available ship and strike at Earth before they can launch more attacks. If we hit them fast and hard, we might be able to overwhelm their defenses through sheer numbers. Several other military commanders voiced their agreement, but their words rang hollow in the vast chamber. Everyone present had seen the recordings, from Admiral Zexkar's encounter with the UHS Retribution. 9 of the galaxy's most powerful warships had been destroyed in minutes by technology that treated the laws of physics like mild suggestions. And how exactly do you propose we attack them? Asked Scientist Prime Thylana of the Research Collective. Their ships can disassemble matter at the molecular level, create artificial gravity fields, and manipulate space-time itself. Our weapons might as well be throwing rocks at a hurricane. The debate continued for hours, but no one could propose a solution that had any real chance of success. The humans had revealed capabilities that were centuries beyond anything the galactic powers possessed. Worse, they had been studying alien technology and tactics for decades, giving them detailed knowledge of every possible countermeasure. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the Endeavour, staring at a communication device that Commander Bennett had given him before departing. The device was made of the same strange material as the human super technology, and it felt warm to the touch, as if it were alive. Captain, Bennett's voice came from the device. I know this must be difficult for you to accept. Everything you thought you knew about humanity's place in the galaxy has changed overnight. Morrison activated the device's response function. Commander, I need to understand something. How many people on Earth know about this technology? How long has the government been planning this takeover? Bennett's answer was not what Morrison expected. Captain, there is no secret government conspiracy. There is no hidden military organization pulling strings behind the scenes. What you're seeing is the result of human nature itself. I don't understand. When we found that ancient derelict ship 50 years ago, we didn't know what we were dealing with. But as our scientists began to understand the technology, something remarkable happened. Every breakthrough led to 10 new discoveries. Every problem we solved revealed 5 more opportunities. The knowledge grew exponentially. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying this just happened naturally? Human curiosity. Captain. Our species' greatest strength and perhaps our most dangerous trait. We couldn't leave the mystery alone. We had to understand how the ancient technology worked, and once we understood it, we had to improve it. Within a decade, we had surpassed our teachers. Within 2 decades, we were creating things they never imagined. The implications were staggering. This wasn't the result of military planning or government policy. It was simply what happened when humanity encountered knowledge beyond their current understanding. They absorbed it, improved it, and then used it to reach even greater heights. But why the secrecy? Morrison asked. Why not share this knowledge with the galactic community? Bennett's voice carried a note of sadness. Because we know our own history, Captain. We know what happens when one group gains overwhelming technological superiority over others. We've seen it on Earth countless times. The advanced group always conquers the primitive one, usually claiming it's for their own good. So you decided to conquer everyone else first? We decided to make sure that when the inevitable power shift happened, it would be on our terms rather than theirs. The galactic powers would never have accepted humanity as equals, Captain. They made that very clear in every interaction we had with them. So we gave ourselves the tools to ensure they would accept us as superiors instead. On the bridge of Admiral Zexkar's crippled flagship, the Velthari commander was having a similar conversation with his own crew. The surviving officers sat around the conference table, their faces showing the hollow expression of soldiers who had witnessed their own irrelevance. "Sir," asked his tactical officer, "what do we do now? How do we fight an enemy that can rewrite the laws of physics?" Zexkar's forearms moved slowly as he considered the question. In his long military career, he had faced many different enemies with many different types of weapons, but he had never encountered anything like human technology. It wasn't just advanced, it was incomprehensible. "We don't fight them," he said finally. "We can't fight them. Our weapons, our tactics, our entire understanding of warfare is useless against what they possess." "Then we surrender?" The question came from his communications officer, a young Velthari who had never known defeat. "We negotiate," Zexkar corrected. "We try to find terms that allow our civilizations to survive under human rule. Because the alternative is extinction." As the deadline approached, similar conversations were happening on thousands of worlds throughout Council space. Military leaders who had spent their careers preparing for conventional warfare found themselves facing an enemy that operated beyond conventional understanding. Scientists who had devoted their lives to understanding the universe discovered that humans had already moved beyond their current level of knowledge. High Counselor Vexithera finally called for a formal vote. The question was simple. Accept human. Demands, or face the consequences of resistance. The debate that followed was brief and bitter, with most delegates acknowledging that they had no real choice in the matter. The vote was unanimous. Surrender. When Bennett received the Council's formal acceptance of his terms, he was standing on the bridge of a ship that hadn't existed 24 hours earlier. The UHS Ascension was humanity's newest creation, built from the matter of an abandoned asteroid belt and powered by technology that converted empty space itself into usable energy. "Admiral," Captain Lisa Ward said, she had been promoted along, with Bennett following their successful demonstration. We're receiving surrender documents from 473 separate governmental entities. The Galactic Council has officially dissolved its military forces and transferred authority over interstellar affairs to Earth's Colonial Administration Department. Bennett nodded, though he felt no sense of triumph. What about resistance groups? Any species refusing to accept the new order? A few isolated colonies are refusing to recognize our authority, Ward reported. But their governments have cut off all support. Most are already sending diplomats to negotiate individual surrender terms. And our construction projects? Proceeding ahead of schedule. We now have active shipyards in 47 star systems, with raw materials being supplied by volunteer labor from former Council species. Most of them seem eager to prove their usefulness to the new administration. Bennett walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. In the distance, he could see the lights of human ships moving between star systems, carrying out the massive reorganization project that would transform galactic civilization. It had all happened so quickly that he sometimes had trouble believing it was real. "Sir," Ward said quietly, "do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" Bennett considered the question carefully before answering. "Lisa, in the past month, we've ended 6 active wars, abolished slavery in 12 star systems, and prevented 3 species from going extinct due to resource conflicts. The galaxy is more peaceful now than it has been in 1,000 years. But we did it by conquest. We did it by proving that conquest was impossible," Bennett corrected. "Every species in Council space now knows that military force is useless against sufficiently advanced technology. Wars are pointless when one side can simply disassemble the other side's weapons. Peace isn't a choice anymore, it's the only option." As the UHS Ascension continued its journey toward the galactic rim, Bennett reflected on humanity's rapid rise to dominance. They had gone from being ignored newcomers to absolute rulers in less than a week. But that was only the beginning of their story. Somewhere beyond the edge of known space, the ancient civilization that had left behind their technological gifts was waiting to be found. And when humanity found them, the real adventure would begin. 6 months after the 4-minute war that changed the galaxy forever, Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of his new ship and marveled at how much the universe had changed. The USS Endeavour had been completely rebuilt with human technology, making it more powerful than the entire alien fleet that had once dominated this sector of space. But the ship itself was the least of the changes. Throughout the galaxy, the old order had crumbled and been replaced by something entirely new. The former major powers now served as regional administrators under human oversight, their military forces reduced to local security units equipped with technology that Earth's Department of Galactic Affairs approved for their use. Morrison's new role as Earth's ambassador to the defeated alien nations was one he had never wanted, but he had come to understand its importance. Every day, delegations from dozens of species came to him with requests, complaints, and proposals for how to improve their situations under human rule. "Ambassador," Lieutenant Amy Torres said, as she approached him with a data pad, "we have the weekly reports from the regional governors. Overall productivity is up 37% across all former Council territories, and armed conflicts have dropped to their lowest levels in recorded galactic history." Morrison accepted the reports and scanned through them quickly. The numbers were impressive, but they told only part of the story. The real change was in how different species were learning to work together without the threat of military conquest hanging over their decisions. "Any problems?" Morrison asked. "The Krithak are requesting permission to establish new colony worlds," Torres replied. They say their population is growing faster than their current planets can support, and they want to expand into the uninhabited systems in Sector 447. Approved, Morrison said immediately. Under the old council system, such a request would have taken years to process and probably would have been denied due to territorial disputes with neighboring species. Now, with Earth mediating all such conflicts, expansion could proceed without anyone worrying about starting a war. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Bennett stood in the command center of humanity's newest project. The space around him hummed with activity as thousands of automated systems worked to complete the most ambitious construction project in galactic history. "Sir," Captain Lisa Ward reported, "the Andromeda Gate is now 87% complete. First test activation is scheduled for next week." Bennett nodded as he studied the massive structure taking shape outside the viewports. The gate was built from the matter of an entire star system, converted into exotic materials that could manipulate space-time on a scale that dwarfed anything humanity had attempted before. When completed, it would allow instantaneous travel to the Andromeda galaxy, opening up billions of new star systems for exploration and development. "Any word from the deep space exploration fleets?" Bennett asked. "The UHS Pioneer has reported discovering artifacts in the Void Nebula that match the technology signature of our original find," Ward replied. "Commander Foster believes we may have found the actual homeworld of the ancient civilization." This was the news Bennett had been waiting for. The ancient aliens who had left behind the derelict ship in Earth's solar system had vanished millions of years ago, but they had left traces of their passage throughout the galaxy. Following those traces had become humanity's greatest obsession. "Prepare my ship," Bennett ordered. "If we've found their homeworld, I want to see it personally." The UHS Transcendence was humanity's most advanced vessel, built using technologies that even Bennett didn't fully understand. The ship existed partially outside normal space-time, allowing it to travel between star systems by stepping through higher dimensions. Its construction had required the combined resources of 17 different star systems and represented the absolute pinnacle of human engineering achievement. As Bennett's ship departed for the Void Nebula, similar vessels were exploring the farthest reaches of known space. Humanity's hunger for knowledge had only grown stronger since their rise to galactic dominance. With unlimited resources at their disposal and the combined scientific knowledge of hundreds of species, they were making discoveries that would have been impossible for any single civilization. Deep in the Sol system, construction teams were putting the finishing touches on projects that would have seemed like magic to the aliens who had dismissed humanity just months before. Where Saturn had once orbited, a vast ring of artificial habitats housed billions of beings from across the galaxy, all working together on research projects that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Dr. Sarah Martinez, Earth's leading expert on ancient alien technology, stood in her laboratory surrounded by artifacts that defied easy classification. Each piece represented a puzzle that humanity was slowly solving, revealing new insights into how the universe actually worked. "The mathematics are incredible," she explained to her research team. These beings didn't just discover new laws of physics, they learned how to rewrite the laws themselves: matter, energy, space, time. To them, these were all just different expressions of a single underlying reality. Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Walsh, looked up from a device that seemed to shift and change even as he studied it. "Dr. Martinez, if they could control reality itself, why did they disappear? What could possibly threaten beings with such power?" Martinez smiled as she considered the question. Maybe they didn't disappear, Kevin. Maybe they just graduated, moved on to something beyond what we can currently imagine. This possibility had occurred to many human scientists. The ancient civilization had reached a level of development where physical existence might have become optional. They could have transcended into pure energy, or stepped outside the universe entirely, or transformed themselves into something that operated on principles humanity hadn't discovered yet. It was this possibility that drove humanity's relentless push for advancement. They weren't content with merely ruling the galaxy. They wanted to follow in the footsteps of their mysterious teachers and discover what lay beyond the boundaries of physical existence. In his private quarters aboard the UHS Transcendence, Admiral Bennett reviewed reports from across human space. The numbers were staggering. Thousands of new technologies developed every day, entire star systems converted into research facilities, and breakthrough discoveries that revolutionized their understanding of the universe on a weekly basis. But the most important report came from the deep space monitoring stations. Strange signals were being detected from beyond the galactic rim, patterns of energy that matched the signature of ancient alien technology. Something was out there, waiting to be found. "Admiral," Captain Ward announced over the communication system, "we're approaching the coordinates Commander Foster transmitted. Long-range sensors are detecting massive artificial structures." Bennett made his way to the bridge, where the main screen showed a sight that took his breath away. Floating in the empty space between star systems was a structure so vast that it had its own gravitational field. It wasn't a planet or a space station, it was something entirely new, a construction that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions, simultaneously. "My God," Ward whispered. "Sir, this thing is bigger than our entire solar system, and it's still active. I'm reading energy patterns that suggest it's been waiting for something." As the UHS Transcendence approached the ancient structure, Bennett realized that humanity's journey was far from over. They had conquered the galaxy, unified hundreds of species under their rule, and advanced their technology beyond anything they had previously imagined. But they were still students, still learning from teachers who had vanished eons ago. The structure began to respond to their presence, sections lighting up with energies that painted space in colors that had no names. Somewhere in the depths of that impossible construction, answers waited. Answers about who the ancient civilization had been, where they had gone, and what humanity would need to become to follow them. As Bennett watched the alien artifact come to life around his ship, he smiled. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, but the universe still held secrets beyond counting. And humanity would not rest until every one of those secrets had been discovered, understood, and surpassed. The age of human dominance over their galactic neighbors was ending almost before it had truly begun. Soon they would be reaching for something far greater than mere political control over a single galaxy. They would be reaching for transcendence itself, following the path blazed by beings who had learned to step beyond the limitations of physical existence. The real adventure was just beginning,